Okay, guys. So we're going to talk about how to put your parts in our slicing software. So my name is Adam, and let's walk through it. So first, you want to get the SD card out of the printer, and it's going to have a little groove at one side of it. It's the opposite of the gold side, little gold pens. You're going to take the card out of the groove, and then you're going to put that little tiny thing inside the SD card reader at the laptop. And it's a specific laptop. There's a label that says 3D printer PC on it. And it's also a label that says 32. But if you come in, we'll help you, or Marco will help you, or someone will help you get that. So don't worry about that. So after you have the little tiny SD card out, there's a little tiny slot on the right side of the laptop, and you slide it in there, and it kind of clicks into place so you know it's in. And then you can double check as well. Let's just show. So this is it right here. This is the SD card. And we're going to need this because our printer is not connected to the internet. It needs an Ethernet connection, and there's some problem with IT or whatever, who knows. But no problem, we have the SD card. And then I created a file in here for us called Marine Team. And you're going to save all of your G code from the Reactor software to this file. So here are some examples that are in there, and that's some stuff that I printed. So let's go through it. So here's Reactor, or you can type in Reactor at the bottom. And I'll open. Wow. Okay. So this is the space, and this is a model of what your print or our print bed looks like. So this is a huge box. Our printer is pretty big. So that's great. We can pretty much print anything we want, I think. But this is where the parts go. And you'll be able to see, like when you put glue stick on the printer, you'll be able to see where to put the glue stick, because in this thing, it'll show you exactly where the parts are. So how do we get our parts in? Let's find out. Oh, and I'm rotating this by holding right click. It's kind of like SolidWorks. And I'm also zooming out with the scroll wheel. So yeah, so we're gonna go to the top. At the top left is add objects, select that. And when you guys sent me your parts, or these are some of mine, I just saved them in the downloads, but you access your parts as any STL file that you save to your computer. So let's do this one. So here's the first half. And I don't know if we could have printed them as an assembly, as like just one part. I don't know, but I didn't do that, so whatever. So now we have our two parts inside this thing, and we can select each by clicking on left click, or if you want to select both, you can do shift click and you'll have both of them. So now let's go over some settings. So this top thing here is the print nozzle diameter. So I think this is 0.4 millimeters. I don't know the units, but this will be the highest resolution, and it'll take the longest time, but that's fine. The high resolution is pretty nice. And I read that you pretty much want to use this 0.4 on pretty much everything, unless you have something extraneous or something weird that you already know in advance that you're going to be used, like 0.6 or 0.8. And so a higher diameter, it will increase the amount of filament and stuff that gets put out of the printer. And it'll take less time to print an object at 0.8 compared to 0.4, but the resolution will not be as good. So that's kind of the differences between these. And you're going to always want to select 0.4 in general. And then don't do these. Our printer is F410. These are something else. I don't know what these are, probably a different model. But always have this selected. This is where you select the type of filament. Ours is a PLA, and our brand is Atomic PLA. So I wonder if I can clear this. Okay, cool. So say this is empty. You first want to select PLA from the dropdown, or I believe if you select the second one, it just takes you to the screen. So it appears that they want to know exactly who manufactured the filament and what type it was. And so ours is PLA, and it was made by Atomic Filament. And so just select that there. You can see this glow in the dark. That's pretty cool. Carbon fiber. What the? Okay. So yeah, check that. That's good. Save. And then this is right here is our settings. we have default, and then I made this tutorial 1 parts. Default is pretty much fine for anything you're going to do. You may want to mess with the settings if you're doing some specific things, but default would normally be not a problem. But I did add some settings in ours. So I'm going to open them here and we'll go through them. And if you want to add profiles, you can do that to the right over here. And you can save them and I guess delete them, whatever you want to do. So these are the basic settings. I didn't mess with any of this. Yeah, I didn't touch this stuff. This was fine to me. But in advanced settings, I made sure retraction was selected. And I think it automatically is, but that's pretty important. Whenever your printer puts some material down and then moves to a different location, retraction means it'll pull a little bit up, and so that it doesn't drip out across your object as the print head moves about. So that's pretty important, so you don't have a lot of stuff to take off afterwards. So I selected that. I believe all of these are as they came, so I didn't mess with these too much. One thing that I did was I printed a brim. So the very first layer of the print is the most important, in my opinion, because if that first layer doesn't adhere well to the glass bed, then everything else is screwed. So it's important that that thing sticks. And the way that that thing sticks is, one way you can help that is by adding a brim. And this will be like an extra wide, it kind of adds like a little tiny layer at the bottom, and it touches, like gently touches the first layer of your object so that it sticks well and it has something to stick to. At least that's what I saw when I printed. So I did automatically. And so you'll see, and I'll talk about it when we put in, like we're gonna have to do some adjusting to the part as well, some orientation stuff. And I'll talk about why the brim is gonna be important then as well. So for this, I selected automatically. And then I didn't really mess with anything else. I didn't adjust this stuff at all. And I assumed it was going to be fine. And I think it worked out all right. So yeah, we'll select OK. And then now let's do some object manipulation. So right here, you have these 5 different options. The last one is called move, and you can move the part. So say you wanted it directly in the center. You can move it there, you can move it over here, you can do whatever you want, and then you can move one at a time like this, or you can select the other and move one at a time. And so yeah, that's move. Scaling is how much they're going to be scaled by. So this is a 1.0 is, I guess, the real size from SolidWorks. So I printed mine at 0.5 scale. So it makes it smaller. And then I'm assuming if you do like 1.5, it makes it massive. Yeah, it's way too big. Let's do 1. And then we're going to go to rotate. So you can rotate this stuff. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So if you click on it, you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little arrow, and it'll rotate in the direction that you want this thing to go. And that's perfect. We actually want to keep it just like that. That's the orientation we want to print with. So that's great. And then flip, I guess you could flip it. Okay, that's the only thing that did anything. I guess because it's pretty symmetrical. I think that's just flipping it upside down. Okay, that's cool. And then support. So this is important for overhangs. So like this right here, this stuff is an overhang. So when the printer prints from the bottom up. And so when it gets to this point, it's not going to be able to do this if it's just empty space, because it'll just print over thin air and it'll just fall down and get really messy. So we want to have support. So I'm going to do both of them, and I'm going to select support everywhere. I think that's automatically selected, but just to make sure. And then this stuff is to show your objects. You have our 2 objects here, and then our support, which will be underneath this to help with the overhangs. And there's modifiers, but I didn't mess with that. Don't worry about that for now. I think that's advanced stuff. So one thing that I also did was I wanted to make sure that I placed them correctly, or at least I didn't really know which would be best, but I found this option here under edit, and it has auto place objects. And so I just did that. And so I don't know if it's better or not, but that's just what I did. So now we have all our settings ready. We have our parts in, and now let's prepare. This will spice, which is a cool word. And we'll just wait for it to finish. Cool. So let's go through the top down. So I like to do this section, this little button, this toggle show layers. This shows how the thing will print over time. And this is to support this purple stuff. So you can see how this is kind of a layer down, and now that top layer is printed on top of the support. So that's how it's going to prevent that thing from printing over thin air. And this thing's pretty huge. So it's going to take some time, 13 hours and 3 minutes. This is exactly, if we did not modify the scaling at all from SolidWorks, this is the time it would take to print, which is enormous. That's so much time. But then you can also go here and you can see how it'll look over time. I'm scrolling with this side wheel over here, and you can kind of check out if you want it, or sometimes I mess with that when I wasn't getting the parts that I wanted wasn't printing the way that I wanted. I would go here and I would see layer by layer. Okay, where is it messing up? Are there some settings that I can mess with? And so this part was pretty useful for me to check out. But let's get this printing time down, because that's so long and I can't stay here overnight. I don't want to do that. So then to fix that, let's mess with the scale, because the scale will scale everything down. So let's do, this is what I did. I did 0.5. And then this thing kind of grows. This will go away. Oh, there we go. 0.5. Now I'll select, I wonder if I have to scale the support down as well. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now we'll edit, auto place, and then just for fun, I'm gonna kind of mess with, oops, I'm gonna mess with them. I'm gonna put them right there. I like that. Cool. So now our scaling is down. So let's same exact setting, same everything else. Let's prepare and see how long this one will take. Cool. So this is 2 hours. That's much better. And this is what I did. Let's see. There we go. So it's the same thing, same part, just a lot smaller, a lot less material. I think the last one, the filament length that it was going to print was like 131 meters. That's so long. This one's, yeah, that's much better. But obviously for our, for the marine thing, for the wave energy converter, we'll have to print to scale and it'll take some time. But at least for these parts, we can mess with scaling to shorten the time printed. So awesome. So now our final step, this looks great. This thing is the brim, this thing right here, this purple thing. So it's going to, let's go down to the very bottom layer. Okay, so this is the first layer that would be printed. So this thing right here, this stuff, is really important that sticks, because often that would scrape off when I was printing earlier failures. So that is, so this brim, I don't know if it really helps because the support's there, but at least the brim is keeping the support in line. And so maybe that's great. But all I know is that with the brim and the support, the part turned out great. And I was very happy with that. So I called it a day. So now let's export. So this is how we're going to save our G code. So click that. It's going to open up this file viewer. We're going to save it to the SD card, to the marine team, and then we're going to call it whatever we want. So I'm going to call it sample. And then we'll save. Okay, we're good to go. Now I'm going to minimize Reactor, and then I'm going to, this is the last step. This is very important. Eject the SD card. Don't just take it out. I guess bad things can happen otherwise, but eject. And then press in on the SD card to in the slot for it to pop out, take it out, and put it in the printer. And you're good. All right, Thanks, guys.